What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke with our Sunday live stream for the WM Phoenix Open. Gonna get you ready for all of your round 4 exposure with a look at the weather report, ownership for DFS, also some shots gained metrics for building your player pool. We'll talk through the course averages, also conditions for Sunday and how that'll impact the prop boards, and give these guys some underdog and price picks exposure to tail, and also some matchup exposure towards the end too. But other than that, hopefully everyone's having a fantastic weekend. It was a good day of golf for yours truly. Ended up having a good run of it at the Showdown streets, and we profited on our props as well. And if you guys tailed the Hideki and Hovland slip, that full cashed for us, which was nice, but also quite a few other cashes that we had on the Patreon too. So it was our first really big day of the week. We had a break-even day, a losing day so far. So all that's left off to do is to have another big day on Sunday to get us well into that positive. So I'm looking forward to that also for the DFS streets and what is a jam-packed leaderboard at the top. And you guys can see that right off the bat on the screen. We've got ourselves a ton of players into contention, and not just a bunch of bodies at the top, but some legit dogs within 2 to even just 5 strokes of the lead. So really excited to go through some of those options and who's going to make the run tomorrow. Any questions, feel free to go ahead and throw those in the chat. But we've got a lot to go through here. And we got Rushing Yard in the chat, Alan there early. Yeah, let's hit the range after the round and fine-tune everything for Sunday. We got Jay Steele. I appreciate the comment there. It's going on. Antonio as well. And yeah, Hideki and Victor did come through today, so that was nice. We got a question about Siwoo. I'm liking some Siwoo for tomorrow, so we'll add on that later in live. And you're saying definitely a playoff. I'm thinking so too, man. It's too jam-packed. Unless somebody shoots like a 62 that's at that top end of the board, that's likely going to be the case. And we got Hooves in chat, Busboy as well. Smash day today. Let's run it back tomorrow. And you said you're looking at some Hideki. By the way, Sunday Hideki is a thing. When he wears the yellow, he plays better. You got Akshay for the top 3. I got a top 10 bet this week, so I'm hoping he can hold that up. Let's have a day. Let's get back after it. And look at that. Jose in the chat says he's rich at this point. Awesome to see. And it's against Jordan Smith, by the way, Weber, that birdie or better matchup. So they may have it listed wrong, but I believe it's Jordan L. Smith, not Jordan Spieth. Yeah, I wish Jordan made the cut, but unfortunately didn't do that. Let's get on after this thing, though. So we're going to start off with a look at this leaderboard, actually, and to show you guys exactly what I was talking about. I mean, we have 9 guys within 2 shots of the lead. And then if we extend that out to 4, even 5 shots, like we normally do, 5 shots off the lead, we have 19 players. That is going to lead to a lot of volatility with your placement points. And although getting the top 5, 2 or 3 of those guys is going to still matter, you can really open it up. I mean, these guys down there at T11, T16 are live for those placement points. And although these T20s and T22s aren't going to have that same sort of top 3 equity, they shoot a -4 tomorrow and they sneak into that top 10. That might be enough to get to the optimal lineup as well. So it's a little bit of a different showdown slate. I think a little bit more of an interesting one because there's so many live names. If we don't have the Justin Rose that's leading by like 5 or 6 strokes. So ownership's also a little bit more spread out, but more on that here in a little bit later on. Let's go to the weather next, which looks very similar to round 3. And just like Saturday, it's also going to be threesomes off of both tees. So that really eliminates any sort of a weather edge. And if you do split the averages by the morning versus the afternoon today, that's the first versus the second half on a site like Data Golf, you'll see that the second half played a little bit easier. And that was to be expected with the winds dying down a bit. But it wasn't just that. It was also the higher quality players teeing off later. It's going to be the exact same scenario tomorrow. It looks like the winds might be a little bit flatter this time, but because you've got the guys in contention, people that are playing the best golf and swinging it the best, that are part of those later tee times, I think it's going to look a half a stroke easier like today. And because we're stacking the top end of the board with at least 3 or 4 players in a lot of our lineups, it's not really changing our strategy whatsoever. But we'll get back to this with the conditions, and especially when we go through the prop boards, but it should be relatively similar conditions-wise. And you can see the scoring average was about -1.1. I think it'll be in the -1 to maybe -1.5 range, where placement points matter, but aren't the end-all be-all. We're still going to see rounds where you make 6 to 8 birdies. And if you do that, even if you're starting in last place heading into Sunday, a 6 birdie bogey-free round is almost guaranteed to make the optimal lineup no matter what. So we still need guys to score that are going to go out there and execute on their shots. and no 6 or 7 shot lead like a Justin Rose had to get those guaranteed 12 or 13 points. It's going to ownership though, because that still matters heading into Sunday, but a bit of a different dynamic compared to what we had the first few rounds. First few days, we had a little bit of extra ownership on the guys that were playing well, but now because we have placement points in the fold, that's going to be ramped up even more. So when you take a look at the ownership tab here, that's what we have it sorted by. This spreadsheet, by the way, is from my Patreon page. If you guys want to download this with all my projections to pull, you guys can find that on the Golf DFS tier. I'll link in the description for that, by the way. But when you take a look at the ownership tab that we have sorted, and then you cross-reference it with the current score tab, I guess we could have sorted it by either tab and been okay, because it quite literally follows the leaderboard exactly. And John Perry's -10, so I guess he got cut off there, and he's the one exception to that rule. He's a little bit cheaper. He's also a player that has a lower raw point projection than guys like a Minwoo, so that's why he's a little bit lower owned. But quite literally, you can just go down the list. Hideki in first is your highest owned player. Nikolai Højgaard, Matt McNeely in that second to last group or last group. You throw in a Rio and a Siwoo into that conversation as well. That's the next tier down in the ownership. It is very predictable on a slate like this. And, the guys up top are almost unavoidable because we have so many legit studs that could finish in the top 5. Not to mention a Scotty, by the way, that is actually cut off from this top 10 because he's a little bit lower owned for tomorrow. But you've got a Scotty, you've got a Siwoo, you've got a Matt McNeely towards the top. Even Chris Gotterups are potential placement point guys that aren't making this top 10 in the ownership. Those legit studs are where I want a lot of my placement points. Guys that are much better than their peers. They were in the top 5 to top 10 of the outright odds heading into the week for a reason. Throw in a Matt Fitzpatrick into that conversation too at that $9,200 price tag. These legit studs are the ones that I think are actually worthy of being 20%. I think where it gets a little bit more questionable is when you see these 7K guys or the middle end of the 7Ks, even 6K range players. They're close to 10 to 15%. And although I bet Akshay this week, love him at this golf course. And, if I was going to take a shot on a 7K piece of chalk, it'd probably be somebody like that. But between him and Nikolai Højgaard, that's going to be extremely chalky. Who's on here? Michael Thorbjornsen and Minwoo Lee getting a lot of extra attention. You've got to think twice about using some of these players when there's guys around them that are 4 to even 5 times lower owned. So that's what I'll say about the ownership is that you are going to have some of these guys at the top. But don't forget, especially in the large 150 max style contest, to get different in 1 or 2 spots. And if you're in a single entry, maybe it's not as much of a priority, but even in a single entry against a couple hundred other entries, you don't want to have that donkey chalk train that duplicates itself with like 5 people out of 100, because even when you end up hitting, you're not going to end up getting the sort of ROI that you're hoping for because you're sharing those top end finishes with 4 or 5 other entries. So that's the main thing to avoid. And by the way, the kind of lineup that's going to look like would be like if you started Hideki, maybe used McNeely as your second man in, a Højgaard in the 8K range, and then an Akshay or a Minwoo Lee as another 7K option. That set of core 4 of players is going to be used in like 20% of lineups. Like it's not just, like 5% that's going to get to that kind of a core. 20 to 30% of lineups could conceivably play the exact set of 4 players, which is unheard of for rounds 1 through 3. You just don't see that kind of outcome, right? Becoming 20 to 30% owned, which means that now you're left on a 2-on-2 versus all of those other lineups to try and get all your differentiation and leverage. And that's not a good spot to be in, which is why I would say of these top 10 highest owned players, I would want at most 3 of them in a lineup. And maybe that's a role that you can set on your optimizer. I don't do it by setting a very hard, fast role like that. I do it with product ownership. But if you're playing 3 guys that are over that 20% mark, and especially 4 players, right? You get over that mark is when you really start to get into trouble. 5, 6, God forbid, you're going to be duped like 100 times. Maybe even 500 to 1,000 times in the largest or large field GPPs. That's the kind of situation that you want to avoid. So if you guys want to download this sheet with all my ownership projections, not just the top 10 like you're seeing right here, you guys can do that via the Patreon version. But the last thing I want to point out from this spreadsheet before we move on to going through the shots gained metrics would be what I'm using to build my player pool for Sunday. And it's very similar to the last couple live streams where we've got our rhyme and reasons, been going through the stats, some of the course fit stuff that we mentioned, but also we've got placement points at the bottom. There's actually an extra tag that I add to my player pool to make sure we can get some of those guys that have top 5 equity in there that maybe I couldn't get to otherwise. And it's because it's so important for Sunday and you need to really jam up on a lot of those guys in your player pool that I go out of my way to do so. So, that's just something that I do personally because I find myself getting onto more of leverage plays with a lot of these top tier categories. But getting to that leverage is still very valuable and important in the 150 max contest. So that's why I've got ball striking poppers, short game regression. By the way, these are still good ways to get onto some of your conviction plays up top. Like, for example, Siwoo Kim hitting the ball beautifully, Nikolai Højgaard as well. Like, it's kind of hard to overlook that in those sort of categories. But short game regression, guys that could be due for a little bit of a bounce back around the green and putting. We've got high upside players that's still in play on Sunday, even though the placement points are in there. I mentioned it before, but you're going to get some guys that make 6 to 8 birdies, maybe even get you a bogey-free round that even if they're starting in last place are going to be an optimal play. So I want to make sure I'm getting to some of those high upside guys that'll just go after it. Maybe even the guys out of contention are, good if they're high upside guys, because we know that they're not going to have any sort of conservative mindset, right? We know that they're going to try and make birdie as much as humanly possible. You can look at course history, people that have done well at TPC Scottsdale. By the way, this has been one of our main categories this week, both for main slate and for Showdown, and it's been absolutely printing. Our course history plays this week have been some of the best that we've had for all the 4 rounds. So we're going to be riding that again. We got overseed putters on there. That's good for some of your value plays at the bottom. I explained it a bit yesterday, but a lot of times your 6K guys go off with gaining 3 to 4 strokes putting. So I want guys that are good on this type of grass. And then we already talked about the placement point tag at the bottom, but having a process for getting to your plays is extremely important so that you can get some of the nasty ones out of there that you're just throwing in there for no reason. There's enough players to choose from. In this case, I think there's 72, 73 that made it to the weekend to where, you don't need to be picking names out of a hat to build your lineups properly. So that's why I have this process that is very intentional with everyone that I'm using. And it also helps me communicate with my subscribers on my Patreon page and here on YouTube to show you exactly why I like the plays that I do. So that can be found on the Patreon page as well. But I think you guys can learn from that on trying to find a process and trying to fine tune exactly who you're getting to and try and get some of those junk plays out of there. And if part of your process is getting plays from touts, it's junk. You should be making your own plays. You're only going to be as good as the tout is if you're getting plays from other touts, which is why I want to show you guys that process so much and teach you how to go through the weeds and whatnot. Because I don't win every single slate. I don't take down the large field GPPs on every single slate. No one does, for that matter. There's a few really good DFS players out there that I would love to interview that win a lot more than most. But even then, you wouldn't want their plays for every single slate because you're only going to do as good as they do. So that's why having your own process, having your own rhyme and reasons for getting to plays is so important. And, for example, if you really like guys starting off 10, one of my buddies swears by it this week, then you can make that your narrative. You could have a whole 10 tag in your player pool for tomorrow. Just have something for building your player pool. That's the only thing I ask from you guys. By the way, if there's any player pool deep dives that you guys want, any players that you're curious about with the shots gained metrics, feel free to go ahead and let me know. We can go through any of those in the chat. We're going to do that after we go through some of the poppers for ball striking and short game. And something else worth mentioning is that you guys can take a look at the spreadsheet for some of those other categories. We do have an event history tab, so you guys can find some of those players on there. The POA overseed stats are on the right side as well. And on Bet the Number, I've mentioned this during a few of the different live streams. If you go to hole props, round props is the tab that you want to go to for this. You can find some of the best birdie or better percentage players there too. So showed off how to do that yesterday. If you guys want to see that, check out that live stream. It was towards the middle end. And code Gsluke, if you guys are signing up for Bet the Number, it's completely free to try out via trial. Would recommend doing so if you haven't already. Let's catch up on chat, then we'll go through these shots gained metrics. I'm not going to do any questions until after we go through these shots gained metrics, but let's see what's going on. You said we left off with, I think, around here. What's going on, Cole? Welcome on in, dude. You need your Mav ticket to cash, might double down. I hope it cashes for me too, but I don't know if I'm doubling down at the kind of odds that he's at this point. I think I'm just going to ride it out and see if it's our lucky weekend or not. I'm not going to read that comment, but Yob's seemingly having a good night. And you ended up losing some lineups because of, I guess, that crazy day you're having. But you cracked me up, my man. You seem like a fun dude. I'd love to see you at a golf tournament at some point and buy you a beer just to pick that brain of yours. I feel like it'd be a good half an hour or so. That Jordan Smith was not Jordan Spieth. That's correct. You hit your highest risk 2-man slip of Mav and Cootie for the over 13 greens. Was a sweat, but today was a moneymaker for sure. And 13 greens would have been a little bit of a sweat. Only having 4 misses to work with is a pretty slim margins, but I'm glad it worked out for you. Oh gosh, yeah, the comments in chat just cracked me up. Pin locations just got posted. Yep, they've been posting them at 9. We're going to go through those a little bit later. Can we deep dive Hovland? For sure when we get to those questions. What's going on, Antonio, too? We've got a question about Ewert, which we'll go through. And he said, you need a round 4 matchup lock. I don't give any locks. There's no such thing in betting, unfortunately. We're going to go through the matchup boards. I'm going to go through a few that make sense, but yeah, there's no such thing, man. And anyone says that there's a lock in sports betting is full of shit. I think anyone out there knows that, right? That's not news to anyone. Let's go through some ball striking stats. So round number 3, we want to take a look at who was hitting the ball the best, because oftentimes this is the most translatable stat from day to day. So Nikolai Højgaard, that was what I was mentioning a little bit earlier. Amazing ball striking. In fact, he lost stroke short game, yet he still had a nuclear low round. So that's rather impressive. Sepp Straka really struggled his first couple starts out. Even like the hero didn't play his best, but has really rounded it out over the last round or so. He was one of the more impressive ball strikers as well at 3.6 strokes into the positive. A Siwoo Kim over 3 strokes positive. Michael Brennan, Michael Thor Bjornsson as well, rounding out that top 5. And these top 4, Michael Thor Bjornsson's the first one you can see on the right that actually gained strokes with the putter. These guys that hit the ball well but didn't get a whole lot out of the short game are some of the better modeling plays that we have heading into Sunday. So for example, with the Siwoo Kim and Nikolai Højgaard that are going to be chalky and that were in that top 10, those are some of the plays that I'll still be using despite that tomorrow. So that's my personal process. I lean into the ball striking as much as I can. And I kind of know that a Højgaard, a Siwoo Kim are going to be chalky to begin with. So I'm not that worried about them getting some extra attention. But I think where you can get a little bit sneakier about your plays and maybe where you can find one of those 2 leverage plays that you're mixing into your lineups would be with the guys from like 5 to 15. Like a Bud Colley, for example, at T46 is going to be sub 5% in pretty much every single contest. And just like some of those other top-end players, he hit the ball well, 2.6 strokes into the positive ball striking, but lost over 2 strokes putting. And that's become a little bit of a recurring theme for Bud Colley over the last couple weeks. The guy's putter has been broken to start 2026, but when he figures out how to flip that switch and get into the 2 to 3 strokes positive, he's hitting the ball well enough to have an elite tier week and even like win a golf tournament sometime here in 2026. And he's really good during the Florida swing. I think I'm going to be investing in some Bud Colley at the Cognizant Classic, which I, of course, will be at in a few weeks in person. But even for round 4 showdown, I think if you want to be an early buyer on a Bud Colley, it can make sense as a leverage play for tomorrow. But a Jake Knapp, a Rasmus Højgaard, a Matt Fitzpatrick that also find themselves towards the top end of the leaderboard here are prime candidates for me to use as conviction plays because these are the players that have the most sustainable skill set from round to round. Whereas if we go to some of the short game metrics, like if we sort this by putting, and take a look at the players that really popped here, these are guys that I'm expecting to come back down to earth. So I know we had a question about Victor Hovland before. He's about average ball striking, but gained 4 strokes putting. I don't know if I love him for tomorrow. In fact, I'm not using him in my lineups because of this kind of a stat profile. It worked out for me. He still hit the 8 fairways, but his swing looked completely out of sorts. I watched him on the ESPN Plus coverage because I was sweating that bet for the entire afternoon. And he was hitting a few fairways where he had only one hand on the club when he was finishing the swing. So kind of doing a lot of those Hideki finishes. Doesn't seem like he's completely locked in. And a lot of the putts he was making were like 40 to 50 footers or downhill sliders from 25 feet that had next to no chance of going in. And every once in a while, it's your day and you get those putts to drop in regularity. And that's why he had the round that he did today. So I don't like that as much. And Akshay Bhatia too. I have the top 10 bet on him, but he's at T6 and he's also a lot chalkier than some of the other guys around him in the 7K range. And he was super short game dependent. So, some of these guys are players that I'm going to have to look at once or twice before I throw them into my lineups. Not quite the no-brainers that we had with the shots gained ball striking before. So those are some of the positive players. But if you look at players that lost in these short game categories, by the way, you can extend this to around the green too. Everything we just said with the putting would apply to the around the green, because that's also extremely volatile. But these guys that lost a whole bunch of strokes putting but were okay ball striking can be looked at as a bounce back. And whereas the golf swing is something you can take from round to round, a lot of times, just like you saw with Hovland gaining those 4 strokes putting, it's just luck of the rub of the green, as they say, on whether you're going to get those to drop or not. And, a Pearson Coody at T11 did not have his fastball in round 3, gained 2 strokes ball striking though, but gave away 2.7 with the putter. So this is somebody that I'm using as a short game regression candidate. And AJ Ewert, we had the question about him. He lost like 2.5 strokes putting, but was okay ball striking. I would say that it's still a short game regression candidate, right? I don't want to completely dismiss it, but also keep in mind that these 6K range players also tend to be a little bit more volatile. So, the players that I trust maybe a little bit more for some of this short game regression would be like maybe a Davis Thompson or Gary Woodland. That's more of an established 12 striker, but that lost 2.5 to nearly 3 strokes putting. But don't sleep on an AJ Ewert either. If he's going to be your one piece of leverage, that's going to be sub 2% that you're using to play some other pieces of chalk, then I still think it could work out because there are breadcrumbs of him having a chance to have a big bounce back day tomorrow. So that's the short game regression. Around the green, you can take a look at some of these guys too. Not my favorite plays though, as if you lost a whole bunch of around the green, that also means that you probably missed a whole lot of greens, right? Because around the green opportunities only come when you miss the green. So that's why these ones aren't really as good in my opinion. But these guys that gained over 2 strokes around the green are also a bit of a red flag. So like a Colin Morikawa, the reason why he gained 2.4 strokes around the green is because he lost strokes on approach. And Morikawa's best shots gained metrics come with the approach play over the last couple of years. So those are a few players that you might want to down tick a little bit. Scotty was top 5 around the green. He was still solid elsewhere, though, so it's not like a complete death sentence to him. The thing that might be the death sentence to Scotty, and by the way, I think that Scotty's going to get into contention, so don't take me wrong on this. I still think he's shooting -5, -6. You'll see that when we get to the prop section here in just a moment. However, because he's $14,000, and I was trying to build some lineups with him before we got onto the live stream here, I think the opportunity cost on using him in Showdown is probably too high. And the reason I say that is you've got Siwoo, Hideki, Maverick, Højgaard, Knapp, Fitzpatrick, Thorbjornsen, Bhatia, Hovland, Goddard, Pearson Coody, Rasmus Højgaard. All of those guys are over $8,000 or close to $8,000 in all those different cases. In legit studs, this isn't the kind of situation where you can just get away with fading all of those sort of players, especially when Scotty Scheffler, use him, you're down to $7,000. You use him, you don't get access to all of those top tier options, which is why I think the opportunity cost of using a Scotty might actually be too high in this sort of a case. And I have a whole bunch of main slate exposure where I'm hoping that he can rebound. But because I'm so high in some of these other options that are a lot cheaper, where you can play 2 or 3 of them together instead of just using a Scotty Scheffler, I'm going to be going in that direction instead. So that's what we've got for the shots gained metrics, the round 3 stuff. And by the way, if you want to take a look at the 54-hole leaders for ball striking, I think that makes sense too. In particular, if you want to find some of the plays that you're using as conviction plays up top. So for example, Højgaard, 10.5 strokes ball striking. That is unheard of. That is next level stuff. He's at second position despite losing strokes between the short game categories. As Siwoo Kim, over 8 strokes ball striking despite losing a whole bunch in round number 1. These are some of my conviction plays as well. So now that we've gone through that, let's go through some of the questions that you guys have in the chat. And then afterwards, we're going to go through some prop and bet and stuff. I'm super excited to go through the boards. I like some of the value that we've already found at this point. So if you're here for Prize Picks and Underdog, any matchup bets, I'll be going through that probably, I'd say 10 minutes from now. Depends on how many questions and deep dives that we're here to go through. Let's go back to the beginning of the stream. Make sure that we're not skipping over anything. You said you want a Hideki. Oh, sorry, that wasn't a question. My bad. But yeah, those 2 came through. Can Siwoo stripe it another day? It's the first deep diver question. You grabbed him at 300 to 1 after round 1. Good snag. I mean, he's the kind of guy that can go nuclear low. So I think that was a good bet. Can he stripe it one more time? Of course. You're talking about somebody who heading into this week was gaining over 2 strokes approach per round. He did it 2.8 strokes today. Round 2, he gained 5 strokes. The round 1 was the issue, right? 3.5 strokes into the negative. But even with that, he's still 4 strokes into the positive over the entire event. He can absolutely keep it rolling. So he's one of my favorite plays for tomorrow. I know he choked the last time out on Sunday in contention, but I think he'll be out for vengeance after what happened last time. Let's see. Looking for some other questions to go through. I know we had a few more, so I just want to make sure we're not skipping over them because I would feel bad, right? People that come in and put questions in the chat, watching through, right? They deserve to have their thoughts heard. He said, can we deep dive Hovland? So I kind of already did it before, but we'll go through it again real quickly. Lost strokes off the tee, was just okay on approach, but gained 4 strokes putting. It's like a 3 out of 10 stat profile, so it's below average. If there's something else that's getting you onto a Victor Hovland, though, you could still use him in your lineups. He's at T11. He's got plenty of placement point potential. Unfortunately, though, I like a few of the other guys around him just a little bit more. So the shots gained profile is a 3 out of 10. Overall, still probably a 6 out of 10 play because Hovland's been playing some good golf and he's a good course fit here. But what he did today does not look sustainable. I would be remiss not to tell you that. He said, thank you for my Mav over 4.5 birdies. You played the strokes line because I liked them in cash. There you go. Of course, Antonio, I got you. What about Ewert? Looks good to you? Yeah, I mean, I think it's an okay stat profile, right? Because I know we mentioned that earlier, about a neutral ball striking. I think the short game regression looks like a positive, but I would have rather seen him gain a stroke ball striking or something like that today. And maybe that's being a little bit nitpicky, but I would use him. If he was somebody that was catching your eye, throw him into a lineup or two. I don't think it'd be terrible. Is Vic a stay away from me because he gained those strokes putting? He is. He's somebody that I'll probably be staying away from. What's going on? Adam, he said, amazing Sunday coming up. I agree with you on that. You're taking Scotty birdies at 5.5. He missed a couple putts and is obviously getting his game back. And you said he's getting his B game right now. Yeah, I think he's trending in the right direction, though. Wouldn't surprise me if he got the A+ game tomorrow. I'm taking his under at 67.5 strokes instead of the over at 5.5 birdies. But I think a positive stance play on him in general would, get zero pushback from me. I think it makes sense. You're looking at some Rio over on greens. Yep, we'll talk some prop stuff a little bit later. You said last year's green regulation rankings are 23, 40, and 54. I'm not really sure what that means, to be honest with you. Those last three stats that you're pointing out, maybe you can let me know. I'm not sure what the GIR rankings really stand for. You said 4 for sure. You're sending nips of Blands to me, pal. I wish I had some Blands here, but hey, I appreciate it in the jest. I've got some Coke here tonight. Not doing anything too crazy. Whenever we get to props, you want my thoughts on Straka on birdies, I'll for sure give you some thoughts there. I didn't notice Straka at 3.5 birdies before, and that's an intriguing line now that you mention it. So we'll get to that. Cootie should have a better round tomorrow. 100% agree. He's a fantastic ball striker. Like his ball striking floor, 1 to 2 strokes per round in most cases. He's a little bit of an inconsistent putter, but I'm right there with you, man. I mean, he's just been an absolute killer to start this year. I think a lot of people have high hopes for him in the future. I mean, this could be a guy based on how he's playing right now that's in major consideration in a year or two from now. So I'm right there with you, man. You're betting the under on Ricky at 69.5 strokes. Have to support your favorite golfer. If he goes over, the captain goes down with his ship. I don't think that's a terrible play either, man. I was line shopping that before we got on the live stream here. So I could see that, man. Do you think we'll get a hole-in-one tomorrow? You were tempted to bet the no for a hole-in-one prop, but you chickened out. Yeah, those heavily juiced no's aren't really my sort of thing. So we'll have to look at the pins, and I'll get back to you on that. He said Decky takes this right. I don't think it's quite that simple, Hef. Could he win it, especially as a multiple-time champion? Absolutely. He's the favorite in the clubhouse for a reason, especially being 1 stroke up. But you've got how many guys within like 4 strokes of lead? I think it's like 20 or something crazy like that. It's far from over at this point. 2017 TPC Sawgrass champion Siwoo. That's right. Also Amex champion. And he won recently too at another golf course. What's going on? G Blacks, thanks for the comments. Wondering my thoughts on a few names. I got you. That are typical pin seekers who are out of contention. You said Siwoo would, but he's in the mix. It's a good question. So who are some pin seekers that are out of contention? So Johnny Kiefer comes to mind. Kiefer's not way out of it, but he's at T46. Kiefer does not give a fuck about finishing T25. And I mean that in as positive a light as humanly possible. Kiefer's the kind of high pedigree player that cares about top 5 and wins. So what is he going to do tomorrow when he's out of contention? He's going to take aim at every single pin. A Kurt Kitayama is not scared of the moment. And at T46, he's got nothing to lose. I would imagine that he goes after it pretty hard. Max Homa is not a bitch quitter. We know that. We've seen that a lot recently. Him coming back after really bad performances and playing well. He could be somebody to keep an eye on as a little bit of a pin seeker. On the opposite end of that spectrum, biggest bitch quitter alive, Colin Morikawa, would not expect to see that kind of grind out of him. Xander Schauffele, on the other hand, is a grinder, is somebody that will go out there and actually try and play well on a Sunday. Probably some of those guys, obviously the missed cut players, we don't want to take a look at down there. Those are the ones that immediately caught it. Yeah, maybe a Wyndham too. Wyndham's a hometown guy. He's going to be playing in front of some of his friends and family. If you want to go with a narrative for Sunday, that's maybe a little bit more outside the box. Maybe you play some locals because you know that they're not just going to bitch quit and pack it in like some of the other guys around them. I do worry, though, about Wyndham maybe having some fun tonight at the clubs or something with people that are in town, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, some of those guys would fit that. Is there a reason why scoring was down this year? You really thought the rough being tall this week? Yeah, it's the rough. It wasn't cut since the 29th, so I think that's why the scoring is a little bit harder. Weather was perfect today, so if it's still only played about -1, that's what I've got for that. Classic Prize Picks unable to adjust to the volatility of fairways, so they just gave no options for the slate. Unfortunate, yeah, they had like 6 guys up before. You said you caught Fitzpatrick at 7.5 yesterday, unreal. And yeah, I think it was you that pointed out the Goddard up under on fairways at 8. Really good call on that, man. So thank you for that, and let's try and run it back on Sunday. You got Coke on my desk? Yeah, not the kind of Coke that's the fun type of Coke, but we got a Mexican Coca-Cola, and I'm drinking right now. I'm sorry to disappoint you on that one, though. On the PGA Tour website, the green regulation percentages rank on tour. Yeah, so you were talking about the last couple years then, when you were talking about those stats with Rio, right? That makes more sense. I got what you were saying now. Straka is a multiplier on Underdog. You don't mind the multiplier, though, because you have a boost. Yeah, so if it's a multiplier and you have a boost, I guess we'll just cancel that just for your sake. You said you don't care, right? I think the average is going to be about 4 birdies per round. And I know we didn't get to the prop section yet, but I will just do this because it takes half a second for this category. Seb was an elite tier birdie maker last year. So yeah, at 3.5, I'd take him. He was number 16 on tour, so that checks out for sure. Let's get through these last couple deep dives, and I'm going to go through some prop stuff. It's a great minds think alike. That is indeed true. Not sure why, but Thigala is your favorite golfer. If he stays healthy, is the President's Cup crazy? No, it's not crazy. You're talking about a multiple-time tour winner, young stud that I think everyone thought was going to be like a regular top 10 player. Now we know that he's maybe a bit more volatile than that and not necessarily going to have that kind of a high floor. But yeah, President's Cup is live, especially because I don't think some of the live golfers are going to get consideration for that still. So yeah, I hope he's on the team. I mean, he's playing well enough right now where if he keeps that up for another couple months, he'll be squarely in that conversation. You're looking at Fitzy. Do you have a question about Fitzy? Okay, let's do that. So yeah, Fitz gained ball striking today, and something to note about him, I think it was through 13 holes. He hit every green in every fairway through the 13 holes. And then Jim Nantz, of course, had to put the hex of death on him. So, and jinxed it. I guess we can blame him for some of those bogeys and some of the sloppy play over the last 4 to 5. But yeah, one of the best strikers of the ball today, and I'm going right back to him tomorrow. And not just for DFS, but also for props, like we'll go through here. So maybe I missed some injury news, but Tom Kim strokes lines at 70.5 seems a bit high. He's just been playing terrible golf, man. It's been really tough to watch. A lot of missed cuts. Even when he plays well, something goes off. Like he'll gain 5 strokes ball striking and lose 4 putting. He'll gain 4 putting and then lose 2 or 3 strokes off the tee. I think that's why. It's just the shots gained has been about an average at best over the last couple months. And unfortunate because I love the guy. It's one of my top 10 favorite golfers. He used to be top 5 favorite golfer, but that's slipping. When you're not playing good golf and I'm not seeing you playing on the weekends, it's hard to really root for him as much, unfortunately. Keep a deep dive, Brennan. We can. I think that he's a really good sleeper play. So kind of want to keep this between us here on the live stream if we can. But he gained a 1.4 off the tee today and gained a 1.7 on approach. He's a tour winner. He's a long player off the tee, which plays well at TPC Scottsdale. Yes, please. And he's at T20, which still has placement point potential. Maybe you're not going to win at T20. That's way too far-fetched, I would say. But the top 3 or top 5, if he shoots -5 tomorrow, is still within his range of outcomes. And that's what we need for DFS. It's snowing every Saturday. Oh, cheers, my man. Do I think that Perry will pin Hunter play itself? You mean John Perry, right? I think he'll pin Hunt. I mean, he's been in contention a couple times already, so I don't think he'll be playing too conservatively out there. First Super Bowl question, by the way. I was kind of surprised we didn't get any before this. I got the Seahawks winning, but I want the Pats to win. I want the Pats to win because my stepdad's a Pats fan, and a couple of years ago, I probably would have been rooting for the Seahawks, but he's a really good guy. It's done a lot for my family, so I'm rooting for them just for his sake. And it really pains me to say that as a Steeler fan, because if the Pats win, they pass us on Super Bowls. But it's true. I hope they win. But I do think the Seahawks win. They just got the better team, more experienced team. But we'll see. I think it'll be closer than a lot of other people think. When I saw the odds and I saw the Seahawks at -200 plus, I was shocked. I think it's much closer to a coin flip than that. But I still think the Seahawks are the favorite, right? But I just don't think they're as big of a favorite as they should be. Or you get what I'm saying. Played Pine Tree today. Let's get it. Oh, my goodness. Pine Tree is a hell of a golf course. I'm jealous. Hey, if I get up there for Aronimink, maybe you can pull some strings and get me out to one of these courses. If we can choose a walk-up song to live, what's my song? Probably a Suicide Boys song. You guys know the Suicide Boys. Now you're probably all out there like, what the fuck? Luke listens to hard, like, grunge rap. Yeah, probably a Suicide Boys song where people would look around and be like, what the fuck's this golfer listening to? It's like when you hear Victor Hovland listens to death metal, right? Yeah, probably one of those kind of songs. Shipley bombed today, but has a good ball striking beforehand. Izzy in play tomorrow. Yeah, he did the same thing the day before that, James. So his putting has been completely lost over the last couple of days. So is he in play? Yes, because he could flip that, but I wouldn't expect it. He said Hawks win 34-14. I don't think it'll be that lopsided, but I do think they'll probably win. He said he already bet JSN MVP. I was looking at the MVP odds, and I feel like Drake May is the value bet on the MVP market because if the Pats win, it's almost surely going to be Drake May that ends up being MVP. I don't want to say like surely like 100%, but like he's going to win MVP like 90% of the time if the Pats win. And he's like plus 150, plus 160. That's my favorite bet for that. All right, let's go through some prop stuff. So I already went through all the deep dives that we needed to go through. If you guys are just here for DFS, best of luck with all the exposure that you're going through tomorrow. By the way, check out the Patreon page for all the extra content that we haven't gone through already. That's all the projections, my player pool for Sunday. But now let's give you guys some exposure detail on the prize picks and underdog side. So first off with conditions, I think it's going to play about the same as today. And pin locations would be the big X factor on that. And we didn't have the pin locations before I went live, but I have the scoring average in the -1 to -1.5 range, which means birdie average, probably around 3.75 per round. Maybe it goes up to 4. I could see it improving a bit with, again, depending on the pin locations. Bogey or worse average, 2.4 to 2.6 per round. So marginal changes with any of these certain kind of categories. So we'll check on the pins. We'll see if we have to adjust anything, but even like the fairway average, probably stay around 8 per round. Green regulation average, maybe it goes slightly down to like 12.5 per round, but these are going to be rather useful for us. So then I want to talk about the Qatar Masters as well before we mention some of these pin locations, because we're going to have a DP World Tour prop that I want to point out, but it played harder for round 3. And this is why I did not enter the props yesterday, right? I said, might as well wait and see some scoring before we make any decisions. It was windier than what they were actually calling for in the forecast. So scoring was a bit harder. Tomorrow, though, if you take a look at the forecast, it looks a lot calmer than what they were calling for the day before. So sites like Data Golf, they do projected scoring averages that they post on their site. They had it at like -1.2 or something like that for Sunday. And I think it also makes sense, not just from the wind dropping. And I guess I'll just bring this up because it surprised me when I saw it. But look at the very bottom. There's this warning and it says rain. And this forecast doesn't have the rain on it, but when you click GFS, it says that it rained in Doha this evening. And this is a desert in Qatar. If you're not familiar with the geography out there, it does not rain very often this time of year in Qatar. So if it rains, this golf course is going to be infinitely softer than what it was before. And although there's some wind for the first couple hours of tee times, you can see it's like 10 miles an hour on this GFS. Look at the afternoon. By the time they get past midday, and it is 2 sums off of 1, I believe, it is sub 10 miles an hour. There's no wind gust. I think the latest starters, like the guys in the lead that are already playing the best golf for the DP World Tour, are going to play to like a -1.5, -2 scoring average. At least that's possible from those sort of players. I think conservatively, a half a stroke to 1 stroke under par at the very least is what I would expect from some of those kind of players. So when you take a look at the averages here, I don't think they properly reflect what we're actually going to get from the DP World Tour. So there'll be an under on strokes that I really, really like on that side that we're going to point out a bit later. But before we do so, I want to look at this stuff on the waste management side. So let's refresh the PGA Tour.com's Twitter, take a look at these pin locations, and see exactly what we're dealing with. So hole number 1 is on the front left. This is, I'd say, either the easiest or the second easiest pin that you have at hole number 1. So that's going to be a bit easier. It was in this back right corner. We saw some guys even 3-putting there. So it's not going to be as big a much of a factor tomorrow. Let's go to 2 next. So 2 is in the very back middle. It looks a bit harder than today. And that will probably be the case with a slightly longer shot in. But it is in the middle and in a very large portion of the green. So I don't think it's going to be too terrible. Maybe like a 0.1 shot difference there. 3 is on the front right corner. So it's a reachable par 5. The only hard part here is that it's on this top shelf now. So rather than being on the bottom where you could use the slope to your advantage and hit it closer, now you've got to be really precise to get it close to that front right corner. So I still think that this is going to be the second easiest par 5 that you have on property, but it might be like 0.1 strokes harder than it was the day before, just because the up and down right here is going to be 5 to 10% different, I'd say, compared to round number 3. Let's go to 4 next. 4 is a medium length par 4. It's going to play a little bit shorter for tomorrow here in this front left corner. That's the easiest pin by far that you get at 4. So it's been some easy, some hard so far through the first couple. 5 looks a little bit trickier. It's still tucked towards the very left side of the screen complex, but a little bit of a longer shot in. So we'll add maybe an extra 0.1 shot there. Let's go to 6 next. 6 is in the very middle left of the screen. I would say that this is actually the easiest pin, and this is going to surprise people when I say that, because when you look at the overhead view at 6, it looks awfully close to that bunker, but I would rather be close to this bunker on what is a very flat portion of the green than in this very back left, which is a small portion to hit it to. But also, if you see this here, you've got a backstop behind it to work with, and you're not on this very small left section like you had for round number 2. So I think that this is the easiest pin that we're going to get at 6. Let's go to 7 next. 7 is the very back right. This is the hardest pin that you have at this hole. It's just like round one. Round 1, it was in the back left corner. This back right is going to probably be 0.1 strokes harder than it was today. Let's go through 8 next. 8 is a middle right pin location. It's at the fat side of the green, but it is a slightly longer shot in. I actually think this will probably be about the same kind of difficulty as the day before, just because you do have some little bit more room left and right to miss to that location. Let's go to 9 next. 9 is the very back left corner. This is the easiest pin that you have at this hole because it's far enough from the slope where it doesn't come into play nearly as much. And it's the fattest side of the green over there too. So not a big difference though. I think the scoring average will be probably almost the exact same from round 3 to round 4. Let's go to 10 next. 10 is a front right pin. This is the easiest pin at this hole. It's the shortest shot in, and it gives you a really good angle to attack it. Today, it was an awkward angle where you had to carry it just over this bunker, but now you're going to have a direct line at it with, bunkers toward the right, but you're going to have enough room in front of it to hit it close with a wedge. 11 is a middle left pin location. This is by far the hardest at this hole. It's actually not that far from where it was today, but it's closer towards the water. That's really the main difference at 11. So maybe slightly higher double bogey rate because people might miss in the water this time. Let's go to 12. 12 is in the back left. It's a pretty difficult pin, I'd say. Honestly, looking at these pins, they're pretty tough, I'd say. At least there's a couple more tough pins than the easy pins, but we'll see what they do at the final stretch. 13 next to is the easiest hole on the golf course. Easiest hole on the golf course has the easiest pin here at 13. It's here about 5 paces to the right of this 2. You're going to see a bunch of eagles at 13 with this kind of pin location. Let's go to 14 next. 14 is on the middle left. Let's see. So about here, about the same exact difficulty as today. It's just on the left side as opposed to on the very right. Let's go to 15. That's another par 5. It does have the island aspect to it. It's a front pin location, which is the easiest one here by far. So this is what I meant. Like you had some tricky ones towards the middle, but now we're starting to get some easy and scoreable ones towards the end. I'd expect 16 to be hard, right? It should be the back pin location. Yeah, 16 is in the very back. The only thing I'll say on this one is that because it is a longer shot, they also moved up the tee box today, that the shots are going to release out a little bit more. So maybe this is a hot take, but I think that the scoring at 16 is going to stay the exact same. It was way trickier than I think it looks like on paper today. Like you had a lot of people, if I do, let's click the one, let's get the video out of there, and then let's click compare shots. You had a lot of people that were hitting the green, but look, there's not a ton of birdies on that green. And then look at all the doubles and bogeys that you had down in these bunkers towards the left side. I think with this back pin location that you're not going to see the birdie rate go up. It'll probably be about the same, maybe actually even go down slightly. But I think you might see less bogeys, or definitely less double bogeys. You're not going to see people leaving it in the bunker and having, maybe going back and forth like Matt Fitzpatrick did. But I don't think you're going to see as many birdies there either. Let's go to 17 next. 17's in the very back left. I did not mean to click the ad. They're good at getting people to click their ads and they don't want them to. 17's in the back left corner though, on this very back little peninsula. That's definitely going to be harder than today. And I think we can safely say that's a little bit of a tougher setup than what we had. 18 though is a little bit easier. This is a more accessible pin, not in that very back right corner. But to go back to the averages, now that we've seen the pin locations, I'd say it's closer to the -1 side of that. Rather than -1 to -1.5, perhaps getting a little bit easier, I would say that these averages are going to be pretty accurate. Maybe you drop the birdie average to 3.75 per round. I know I mentioned that a bit earlier. Like 17 is not going to be as gettable. So that might make a lot of that difference there. But this bogey average, I wouldn't expect to balloon. Like I wouldn't expect it to be like 3.5 per round. Maybe it goes up to like 2.6, like maybe 2.75 per round or something like that. But yeah, around that -1 scoring average is what I'm projecting for tomorrow. And those bottom two categories, they're not really going to be impacted based on pin location. Maybe greens regulation a little bit. So maybe we drop that down to like 12.25 per round. But even then, I still think there's quite a bit of value to attack on these boards, and mostly into the positive stance direction. So let's go ahead and show you what some of those have looked like. The first one I want to take would have been a Scotty Scheffler for the under at 67.5 strokes, but they bumped that from 67.5 down to 67. So if you're going to enter this, I believe Underdog, maybe even better, has it up at 67.5. I would snag that if you can. But the reason why I entered that earlier and posted it to my Patreon page, and a whole bunch of people already tailed it evidently because it moved, is if it was -162 towards the under on DraftKings. So heavily into that plus EV direction. And if it's going to be like a -1 to -1.5 scoring average, that would have been asking him to gain 2.5 to 3 strokes to the field, which seems like a lot. And it is. It's not like, anyone just can go out there and do that. But it's world number one, Scotty Scheffler, who's won twice at this golf course. And he's been dialed in over the last day or so. And to get into contention, starting 4 strokes off the lead, or 5 strokes off the lead, he has to be aggressive. He can't just shoot like 3 under par and think that he's going to make up any ground. He's going to be pin hunting from hole number 1. So that's why I took that under. It did bump. So maybe you can check him out on a few other different sites. Let's see. Mav moved 2. Look at that. I took Maverick for the under at 69.5. He was -146 towards the under in DraftKings, so heavily into that plus TV direction, and he moved down 0.5 from 69.5 down to that. Oh boy, did they move every single prop that I've already entered at this point? Probably not this one, right? We'll do this for the community tail. So unfortunately, that first slip that I entered isn't going to be something that we can tail, but these other 2 props are still on the board as of right now. So get them in if you can. It'll be an under on Matt Fitzpatrick first, though. So to go back to the averages, I think it's going to be about 2.5, maybe 2.6 per round tomorrow for the bogey or worse average. Matt Fitzpatrick last year was an above average bogey avoider, but what's worth noting about him, and I'll show you guys that. We click stats, we'll go to scoring, we'll click on bogey avoidance, then change the year because 2026 is foolish to look at that. Only a couple weeks in at this point. But Matt Fitzpatrick was number 83 in bogey avoidance, so a little bit above the PGA Tour average. But that was with him having a horseshit start to last year. I mean, Matt Fitzpatrick was missing a whole bunch of cuts, or at best like T35 for the first couple months of 2025. But by the end of 2025, was arguably a top 5 player on tour for the last 6 months. So his bogey avoidance, for example, and I think we can just do this over here on a site like Bet the Number. So let's go to round props. Change this to the last 36 rounds, so we have a little bit of a bigger sample size to work with. But let's take a look at some of the best bogey avoiders that we have in the field. And I haven't even done this yet on Fitz. I just know it's the case because of how he's played. Let's take a look at who has some of the best bogey averages over that point. And this does come down to field strength. So you're going to see a bunch of the fall swingers on this kind of a list. But let's figure out where Fitz ranks out, even despite playing in a lot harder fields than some of these other players. Even despite that, the majors, he only played in like the playoff events. A lot of those are included in this kind of a sample size. He's still towards the very top end of the bogey avoiders. He's still into the green, which is an above average player in that category, just like his rankings from all of 2025. So that with -130 juice towards the under on DraftKings was something that I thought was worth playing. And you mentioned it with the DFS section before too. He had hit all of his greens and all of his fairways through like 13 holes. He was as locked in as anyone was with his swing today. So I'll get to that all day. Not quite plus EV value at -130 juice, but close enough for me to play it, at least with the traditional analysis behind it. And then I also took this under on Patrick Reed strokes. And I think the scoring average might be close to -1, maybe even -1.5 if we get our wish with the conditions on the TP World Tour side. But he's 70.5 on the sports books, and he's -150 towards the under. So with the push equity at that number, I'll still play it at 70. But here's what you've got to realize is that Patrick Reed over the last 3 starts on the DP World Tour is averaging 3.1 shots gained per round. So if I think the scoring average could be -1, that puts him at like a -4 projection. And it's not exact math, but that's rough math that I use for evaluating a lot of these props and doing my handicapping. That would put him, and it's crazy, down at 68 strokes or 68.5, if we're maybe a little bit more conservative about it, with the projection for tomorrow. Let's say that even if it plays as hard as it did today, like even par again, well, even then, he would still be at like 69.5 at the very worst, probably 69 for his proper projection. So I'm going to take that under. He does have a lead at this point, but there's enough guys close to him at the top end of that leaderboard where he can't just go out there and coast. He's got to shoot a couple under par, probably 3 or 4 under par to lock up that victory, which is exactly what we're betting on this sort of a bet. So I'll take that. pair it up with the Matt Fitzpatrick under, and it gives you still a full 3x payout, which I thought was worthy of playing for Sunday. And, after seeing some of these pin locations, I was kind of leaning towards mostly going towards positive stance plays, especially after getting the plus EV leans on Scotty Scheffler, Matt McNeely locked in before they bumped. But now, after we've seen those pin locations, I think that there's some fade value that we can attack. And I wasn't going to be as bullish about it before, but now I absolutely am. Like, if you can give me a marginal player at 4.5 birdies, I'd slam that under in a minute. Now, it looks like most of those quote unquote marginal players are at 4 birdies as opposed to being at 4.5. But maybe we could do some line shopping and find something that's drastically off. And at least on the prize picks board, I don't see anything that was too off, maybe other than a Sahith Theegala at 4.5. But he's starting to play some better golf. So I don't know if it's really the time and the place because he's played so well at this course to pick on a Sahith Theegala. Or maybe we can do it on strokes. Like some of these guys going off early that are out of contention, if they start off like +1 through their first couple holes on that back nine's super tough, by the way. If they end up kind of struggling right off the gates, I could see them mailing it in and not having a good day. And somebody was asking about the Ricky Fowler under at 69.5 before. That bumped on us. So we can't snag that, unfortunately, or else I kind of would have wanted to. But maybe if this board keeps bumping and we get some of these scrubs start to bump like 0.5 strokes, there might be some value to take in the opposite direction. So I'm just kind of going through this. They added a few players to the board since I last saw this, just to kind of see if there's anything that stands out after seeing those harder pin locations. And I also want to catch up on chat. If you have any bets that you guys want me to go through, now is the time for that. That can be matchups. That can be prize picks or underdog props like we're looking at here together. Worth noting, the fairway board, very small compared to the last couple of days. I was kind of looking at a Højgaard under on fairways. The counterpoint, the reason why I didn't enter it, though, is that he's hit like 9 or 10 fairways all 3 rounds so far. So normally a well below average accuracy driver. That's why I would have liked that under, but he's having a really good week in that department. So maybe not the best week to take that sort of in a lean. I was also looking at this green regulation board before, and after seeing some pin locations, like it could drop to like 12.25 per round even. I think 12.5, probably the better projection, but if anything, I would have the average dropping compared to what it was today. And you've got now guys at 13 that were at 12.5 the day before. So I'm not saying that like there's obvious value per se on this category, but like Erasmus Højgaard, at least to my knowledge, isn't known as like a ball striking first player. He's a very good putter. He's long off the tee, takes advantage of the par fives, very aggressive player, but hitting 14 greens of regulation with only 4 misses in your pocket is a bit sketchy, in my opinion. I don't know if I'm going to take that under myself. I'm going to have to do some modeling after we get off the live stream and maybe look at some of the lines on the sports books and compare to see what the heck we're dealing with. But, based on first glance, that seems a little bit optimistic, in my opinion. Let's catch up on chat, though, and then see if there's any bets and matchups that we can go through as well. He said, love hearing me on the Scotty under because you were pairing that with Seth. Let's get it. Yeah, it's Sunday Scotty, too, man. That's just something that he does. And he said, hit that like button. I appreciate that, Byron. By the way, my guy Byron, an absolute legend in the community. And it's nice to see you in my live chat for once. I'm normally watching you, Byron, right? So it's good to see you in my live chat. It's kind of cool to see that. And I know it's not your first time in here or anything, but it's, I don't know. You've got some great shows yourself. So it's just a little bit of respect there to you. Any mixing Super Bowl props with golf picks? Do you get a better payout if you do? Yeah, you do, because it takes away the correlation. I haven't entered anything for the Super Bowl yet. I've been so locked in on golf the last couple of days that I haven't completely broken down the board yet. So yeah, I'm going to be doing that very likely, especially with some of like the prize picks and underdog stuff that I enter, but I don't have anything for you yet, unfortunately. I'd have to say, like, just based on like the game and the matchup, I'm going to be looking at some Drake May rushing lines. He's ran a lot this year. He's been a willing rusher. He puts his body on the line, and it's the biggest game that he's played in his life. So what you see a lot of times from quarterbacks in that scenario is that they run more. Prime examples of Patrick Mahomes. The guy runs twice as much when he's in the playoffs as every other week. Probably going to be looking at some Drake May rushing. You wouldn't do that with Darnold, though, right? Because Darnold's a statue. He's not running no matter what. Let's see. You got it in. He said, Luke, moving the needle. Unfortunately, I moved the needle. I'd rather not move it. I know it's a sign of respect from the lines makers, but I'd rather you guys be able to tail everything. So yeah, screw them. He said, thoughts on Decky for the over-under at 4.5. He said Decky's 81st and off the tee this week. Yeah, so I kind of didn't want to talk about this before because talking about fades in DFS is a risky business, right? Because people love to talk about who they're playing, but they don't like to talk about who they're not playing on Sunday. But I'm just going to put it out there because I'm no bitch. I'm willing to put my neck on the line. I'm not playing Hideki Matsuyama tomorrow, even though he's Sunday Hideki, even though he's one of my favorite players to use when he's in this situation. He's such a clutch player. The off the tee is a real concern. He's only hit 52% of his fairways. He's been spraying it all over God's creation this week. And the guy's just been lucking out the entire time. I know he had a couple penalty shots, but it could have easily been 6 penalty shots or more at this stage of the week. Yeah, I'm staying away from Hideki, man. He's somebody I'm high on for main slate. So if he goes off tomorrow and ends up winning, I can stomach that because I've got other exposure that's going to highly benefit from it. But it's sketchy, man. I think at 4.5 birdies, maybe you take the under, hoping that he misses some fairways and then he can't go after those par 5s and 2. I feel like the better way to go about it, though, would be a fairway line. If you can attack it that way, just go after the weakness. But that, too, is probably a decent lean. What did we do with Xander? You're thinking about the under at 4.5. His line was 5 for round 3, and he had 3. He said, he's still an elite player, but he hasn't looked great this week. Yeah, so let's look at the shots gained, actually, because I think it depends on how he did it. It's not just, what he did that matters. He lost ball striking, but he did gain off the tee. That's a big improvement for him. He had been having a lot of issues with the driver for the first couple rounds, and he lost in the other 3 categories. I don't know if I could take it at 4.5, man. And here's the only reason why. Is he's an elite tier player, and then you have guys like Sahith at 4.5. And I'm not picking on Sahith. I literally love the guy. He's one of my top 5-7 favorite players in the world. However, Sahith is not anywhere close to as good as Xander Schauffele. Like, it's just straight up facts. I don't think anyone would really contend that. This week, maybe it's different. Maybe Sahith does look like the slightly better player, but we don't over-adjust based on just a couple rounds. These players' long-term baselines is the by far more reliable skill set, and that's how you should be betting golf for the most part, is using long-term sample size over the short-term. Ideally, you want to marry up the long and the short-term sample size. Those are the plays that are absolute nuts. I don't know if I could get behind that, just with some of the other fades that are maybe a little bit better. He said swap rookie strokes for Cootie, thanks as always. Yeah, I could get behind a little Cootie play. Is he at 69.5? I'm assuming he is, because you were saying that you were swapping him for the Ricky one from before. Where's Cootie at? There he is. Yeah, 69.5 strokes. Yeah, he gained ball striking, lost a little bit over 2 strokes putting today, so that's a good shots gained bounce back profile. Yeah, I don't think it's terrible. I want to look at what are the odds on that, though. Like, I know the odds were favorable on Mav. I'm not sure if they had any odds up for Ricky Fowler. But let's see. See if they had anything up for him. Uno segundo as I bring this up. Look, 1 second. I want to look at Pearson's odds. I want to look at a couple of these. I want to look at Matt Fitzpatrick, if they have any lines on those two. Because, see, so Fitzy, look at that, minus 140 under. So even if you wanted to take that instead of the under on bogeys or worse, I could get behind that. Let's look at Cootie. Does Cootie have a line? He does. He's not juiced as heavily as a Fitzpatrick at minus 126. But yeah, I don't think that's a terrible lean at all. Let's look at Nap's odds. What's the Napster at? Nap is minus 138 under, so maybe he's a slightly better line if you're looking at the sportsbook odds. But I'd be remiss not to mention that the sportsbook odds are just one data point. They get things wrong all the time. It's why I've been able to be profitable against them for 5-6 years at this point. It's helpful, though. Like, seeing plus EV odds is usually a positive when I'm going through my process. But yeah, I could get behind that, man. I think I maybe like these two guys a little bit more, but 69.5 for somebody that's playing well and in contention, I could get behind. Even if the scoring average could be -1, guys, here's something that you have to keep in mind with that. And that includes the guys that are in contention and the guys that are out of contention. The guys that are out of contention and that couldn't give a fuck tomorrow, their scoring average is probably going to be closer to even par. The scoring average of the guys that are the better golfers and that are locked in and playing for something is probably going to be closer to -2. And the way that you can see that from today is if you go to data golf and then you split it down the middle, the first versus the second half, the scoring average was 0.3 strokes easier in the afternoon, even though the weather was the exact same. What that tells me is that those top tier players, the guys in contention, were just playing better golf. And by the way, that's even though you had the later starters as not only the guys in contention, but also the guys at the very bottom end of the leaderboard. So even though there were probably some stinkers of the guys that just hardly made the cut that were also teeing off later, the really excellent play of the guys that were in contention led to over a 0.3 shot difference, which effectively was probably a lot larger than that 0.3 shot difference because of those other stinkers that were included in that. So that's why I think like the Cootie play, the Nat play, the Fitzpatrick's, a lot of the 69.5s, like a Mav McNeely that I took before could make sense. But on the flip side, I mean, I mentioned this too, like there could be some fade value on here too. 69.5 for somebody that's just like an average player in this field. It's just, that's probably a little bit too optimistic as well. So I'm going to be doing some of that line shopping after we get off of there. I don't see a whole bunch of 69.5s that are shitty players actually. So maybe there's not as much value in that category, but like birdies are better. 4.5 birdies for one of those sort of options I could probably get behind as well. But let's see, anything else? Usually you love dropping a pick of the day, but this board's tight. Best value you see is the push equity on Cootie at 4 birdies. You don't know, you might just sign up to play the Super Bowl. Yeah, I don't know. Tomorrow's the Super Bowl, so if you wanted to do that, I couldn't blame you too much. It's the biggest thing going on. Hey, it's a good appetizer though on this golf side before it. Said, appreciate you, my dude. I didn't know why you haven't been here lately because the show is fire. Hey, I appreciate you, Byron. And I'm a lurker in your chat a lot, so I'll try and say hi more often. That's the issue with me on these live streams is I don't actually like sit there on the live stream and like watch what's on the screen. I'm somebody that does like my own thing, like my work, and then listens, like podcast views on like all those YouTube videos. So I gotta get into the chat more often. So thanks for the McNeely birdies and directing you to take the above average ball striker from yesterday's vid. Cash big with Fitzpatrick, Hovland, and McNeely. There you go. Probably a 5-6 out payout on that. So it's good to hear, my dude. Batia under 70. Yeah, it's got to have a -1 round to push that. Yeah, the push factor is big, and he's playing some of his best golf over the last 6 months of this week. Yeah, that's something that I could see playing. In fact, compared to some of those other 69.5s, that might even be preferable over some of those players. Let's see. Sweets, you said, thank you. You're going to play the 2-man of Cootie in Rio. Let's get it. Does BTN let you download historical tournament data by players in rounds? Basically like a data golf. They don't have any downloadable stuff on there, but everything is customizable. So I highly recommend checking out Bet the Number because it's free right now. So if you want to see the kind of functionality that they have on there, just use code Gsluke and it'll give you that free trial. So yeah, it's a little bit different than a lot of these other websites out there. And the thing that I like about Bet the Number, the reason why I partnered with them is they're more betting based. Like they actually have a lot of tools that people need for breaking down matchups, breaking down whole props. Like you guys see me using a lot of the tools on here for. The other databases are mostly DFS based or maybe like outright betting based, which still matters. You can still do a lot of that on Bet the Number, but I like the other stuff that they go into. He said, McCarty and Haltong forked you on the top 40s. Yeah, unfortunate for you, man. I hate to hear that for you. What are your plans for the Super Bowl? What's the food situation looking like for me? Well, making some ribeyes tonight. So I'm stoked to do that after we get off the live stream here. I had some lobster before we got on the live stream as an appetizer. But hanging out with my brother in Miami. My brother, some of his buddies, they have one of his buddies lives in a penthouse in Brickell, is extremely wealthy. Apparently, I've never met the kid before. But yeah, his penthouse in Brickell, apparently we're going there. It's going to be some massive party and meeting a whole bunch of people that I haven't met before. So we'll see. It'll be fun. I'm there with my brother. He's the reason I'm going. I love my brother. I'm super close with him, obviously. And I want to meet some of his buddies. So that's why I'll be tomorrow afternoon. Appreciate me as always. You're going to head out. Appreciate you, Antonio. You got Rio at plus 800. You wouldn't mind that. Best of luck to you, man. He said lobster as an appetizer, baller alerts. Hey, we're balling around here because Prize Picks has given us those good lines. So if you guys want to tell everything that we're doing for Sunday, check out the Patreon page for that. That's where I'm going to be posting all my exposure for Sunday. Matchup bets, we're not going to get the Hard Rock bet boards until they post those in an hour or so. So we'll be waiting on that for that exposure. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate your support on the channel as per usual. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. We're going to have a couple West Coast events over the next couple weeks, so I am looking forward to that. But after those couple weeks, we've got the best time of the year in my book. We got the Florida Swing, all the events down here in the Sunshine State that I'll be going to in person. I won't be at every event. There's going to be at least one of the 3 or 4 events that I don't get to, but I'll be at Cognizant for sure. I'll be at the Players for sure. API almost for sure going to be there. And then I'll probably be at the Miami event about a month after that as well. And that's a brand new event on the PGA Tour schedule down in Miami at the Blue Monster. And if you guys have been following me on Twitter or even just my content for a couple years at this point, I've been calling for an event at the Blue Monster for years. It is one of the best golf courses in the world for tournament play, not for you and me. It's super hard. I sucked there. I did not enjoy it as much as I do actually watching other people play. But there's going to be some carnage at the Blue Monster in the middle of summer. It'll be pure Bermuda grass that time of year. It's going to be windy because it's summer, and it's going to be hot as hell. With firm and fast greens, we could have a winning score of like over par at that course. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to some of these Florida events. But until then, best luck with everything that you guys are going with. I hope to see you guys at the top end of some of those leaderboards. And let's have ourselves a Sunday.